Hi there, I'm Drew Badger, the world's #1 English fluency guide, and it is a pleasure to welcome you back to the studio with me today. Here, I'm going to teach you or kind of share with you a really interesting principle, something I discovered as I was learning languages as well, and really it helped me understand why I was failing to learn languages for a long time and why I finally got fluent. So, in my opinion, this is not something I used to believe, but long ago, I thought language learning should be difficult. I thought it should take a long time, kind of like business, where most people just think like business is hard and there are lots of things you have to do to make it difficult. But really, it's more a way of thinking that will change your mind. And if you can learn to see things in a different way, not only does business become easier, but language learning becomes a lot easier as well. Most things are like this, and I'll explain why in this video. Well, I know people have, especially people who've been struggling for a long time, people kind of fight me on my different ways of teaching, but now more people are starting to believe in the way I teach and help, the way I'm helping people learn more like native speakers. And so I want to talk about that right now. Now, this is an aerial view. This means you're looking at something from the top down, and this is the view of a castle. And I use the idea of a castle when I'm speaking with learners sometime. I haven't made a video about it, so I thought I would do that today. But this castle idea, what a lot of people are doing when they're trying to learn a language is it's kind of like trying to attack a castle. The goal is to capture the castle. The goal is to get inside the castle here so you can control the castle, but the castle is very well protected. So this blue part here, this is called a moat. If you don't know what that is already, I'll write it up here already, M-O-A-T. So the moat is this kind of little well of water, and then usually there's a bridge or something that goes across that for people inside the castle to come outside. So let's say you're standing over here and you want to try to attack this castle. Again, you have to get over the moat somehow. Maybe there's some alligators or something inside there. But you also have people standing up here on the wall. Maybe they're shooting arrows or something like that coming at you. But when you're trying to get into the castle, trying to attack it from the outside, it becomes a lot more difficult for you. Now, the same idea of a castle is actually a metaphor for your mind. So when you're trying to learn something new, especially learning a language, trying to attack something from kind of a direct angle like this is really going to be very difficult. It's going to take a long time if you can ever do it. So one person trying to attack a castle like this is going to be very difficult and probably impossible for this person to capture the castle and become the king himself over here. But this is really, again, the idea about your mind thinking the same way. So your mind is like a castle, and learning in this same way is like trying to learn the same way that most people learn in the classroom. And what I mean by this is you're trying to penetrate, you're trying to capture, enter, get access to the mind and help your mind remember something in a foreign language in a way that's difficult. So to try to connect these two ideas, this idea of a castle, but also the idea of your mind, think about what would be the best way to actually capture this castle. Now, this is something you can see in history when people are fighting wars. You can sometimes, if you have a really large army, take over some kind of castle, but the kind of more stealthy way, the simpler way to do it, and with a much smaller force, is to do it from the inside. So this is where you have maybe somebody, if we're just thinking about the castle metaphor here, somebody who's inside the castle already that's working for the people out here. Now this person can maybe kill somebody and maybe open the door for other people to get in. This is the idea of the Trojan horse, if you know this story. So we have this big wooden horse that's outside the city walls, and people say, well, that's really interesting. Why don't we bring that inside? It looks like a gift, but inside, this is a really bad picture of a horse down here, but is hiding a bunch of soldiers who unlock the gates and let everybody else come in. Now, what I'm suggesting here is that you should be doing the same thing with your language learning. I hope this idea is not too complicated. I really want to make it simple, but I thought this would be a fun way to describe this so you really understand the differences in these two ways of learning. So one way is you're trying to attack something by yourself from the outside. Everybody knows you're coming. Lots of defenses up here. You've got the moat, the big walls. People are shooting at you and trying to take you out. And the other way is when you're either inside or you have somebody kind of inside to help you. So looking at these two different ways of learning, this way of learning out here is the traditional textbook way of learning a language. And when you're trying to learn this way, again, you're trying to use translations. Really, that's probably the most obvious thing that people are doing when they're trying to learn one language through another language. And this makes it really difficult to try to get access to the mind over here because the mind doesn't want any new information like that. The mind is already full. It's already got ideas and names for things. So if you want to get into the mind with a new idea or a new name for something, again, if we're looking at this as like a brain or your mind, as an example, your mind already knows the word for table or snow or banana or something like that in your native language. So when you're trying to put in a new word for that thing, it becomes really difficult for your mind to remember that because, again, you're trying to kind of cross over here directly, say, hey, you should remember this word, but the mind doesn't want to do that. And you know how difficult it is for the mind to try to learn something new or to remember new information, especially if you often forget your words when you speak. It's really because you're trying to access the mind this way. Just think about if you've ever tried to change someone else's mind. If you have a political discussion with someone and you're saying, hey, the way you believe something, maybe you should try thinking about it in a different way, or talking about religion or sex or something else that can be a very sensitive subject for many people. If you try to go aggressively at that and just say you are wrong and we need to try to get you to think in a different way because the way you think doesn't make sense or something else like that, people will not listen to you. So the mind will actually shut that off. And it's really because the mind is almost, it's like trying to protect itself and an understanding of reality. I know this is really weird for an English lesson, but I really want you to understand this idea about how your mind works, because if you work with your mind, it becomes a lot easier to do that. So again, this is the non-native way of trying to learn a language where you're in a classroom, you're trying to learn grammar rules, and you're studying textbooks, trying to remember vocabulary, but you're really we call this like a war of attrition or a siege, where you're just trying to spend a lot of time trying to attack this, and hopefully you get in, hopefully you remember something. But the smart way to do is actually have like an inside man. And the way you do this is to work with the mind, especially for trying to remember new words and vocabulary, and this is to learn like a native speaker. As an example, I will contrast here two different ways of learning grammar. One way I'm going to translate something and we're just going to read it in a textbook. As an example, we might take some kind of phrasal verb and I'll give you the definition in your native language, and then you would have to remember that in English. Now, you can try to do this, but again, it's really difficult for your mind to learn that way. But what your mind does like doing is actually learning something the native way. So as an example, the way you would learn some grammar, just a very simple example, with a phrasal verb, you have the translation. We're just going to put a T up here for translation. And here is really just understanding how it works so your mind can understand that. So as an example, I might teach you the phrasal verb turn over. And I might just give you an explanation of that. Let me see if you can read all that. Yeah, it looks like it's coming in pretty well. So to turn something over. Now I can give you a definition of that in your native language. I can explain it to you. I can write it down. We can practice writing it again and again, and you can use translations to try to understand what that means. Or I can just help you understand it by turning over my hand. Turn over. Turn over. So the same thing if I want to teach you turn around. So I'm standing here right now. I can give you an explanation. I can give you translations. You can try to write something again and again and again, and hopefully that makes sense. But this is, again, much easier if I just turn around. Turn around. So if you're listening to me when I'm speaking this, you understand the words and you're connecting the words with the meaning. So the word with the meaning, not the translation with some words in English. So what's really difficult is trying to take like a word in Italian or a word in French or something like that, a translation, and then trying to try to connect it in some way with the English. The mind hates that. The mind does not want to learn that way. And this is why I tell people if you're trying to remember, you should not be using your native language. So specifically, this is a really big problem for people when they're trying to speak and then they forget what they want to say in conversations. Have you ever had that problem where you want to say something, but then even though you studied something like 20 minutes ago, it kind of escapes from your mind? It can be because you're nervous. It can also be because you're really just trying to learn this way. So you're trying to attack the castle this way, but what you should be doing is learning the native way, where you understand something and you actually remember it and understand it the way a native speaker does. And the more you do this, and I've just given you an example of grammar, but again, the same thing works with pronunciation, listening. I don't want to go through all of these different things because it would really make a long video, but hopefully this simple understanding of how grammar works, and even just by showing you something like turn over, you're also getting to listen to my pronunciation, so it's improving your listening as well. You're building your vocabulary, understanding how grammar works, even with just these simple examples. But you can see how this begins to develop something on the inside. It's almost like a cancer. And I know this is another kind of weird metaphor to think about, but you begin with a cell on the inside of the body and it begins to multiply like this. And after a while, it becomes uncontrollable, but cancer on the outside of the body can't survive. So you can't have some like cancer cells over here just sitting around and then have them try to attack the castle. The castle is too strong. But if they're already inside, and this way of learning, like you can think about it like a cancer or somebody that's inside the castle that's working for the outside, but this is how you do it. So this is how you remember, how you improve your pronunciation, how you improve your listening, your like all of the skills that you need in order to become a more confident speaker. But it begins by doing things the native way. And you can start this at any level. But again, just like this example here of saying like turn over, but I'm going to actually show you what that is. All of these different little examples come together. So you've got turn over here, where you learn some other vocabulary, some pronunciation, something like this, but you're doing all of this the native way, and these things begin to connect with each other. And it's already inside the castle, it's already inside the mind, so it becomes impossible for you to forget. So this is why it actually is possible to learn things the native way, and again, I've shown you this example already, but hopefully this idea makes sense. If it does, let me know. Do comment down below in the comment section and let me know if this idea makes sense or if I'm just talking crazy talk over here. I know it's easy to talk about like here like some words to remember, and I can teach you some things, even helping you learn those like a native speaker. But I want you to understand this idea for yourself. Because if you understand this idea, it's going to stop you from learning this way where you're causing a lot of trouble, just making really a lot of trouble for yourself. So it becomes a lot more difficult for you to understand things, and your progress is much slower. But if you kind of sneak in the castle inside the mind here and you work with the mind, then everything becomes easier and faster. So this is exactly the way I teach in all of my premium programs, whether it's the Visual Guide to Phrasal Verbs or the Art of Conversation or the Fluency course, Master English Conversation, all of these different things. I'm using this principle to help people learn the native way. So you learn things the native way and you begin developing the skills the same way a native would. Isn't that cool? So it's a lot faster to learn this way, and this is why language learning doesn't have to be difficult. So if you agree with that and you start seeing this even with these simple examples that I've given you here with some very basic phrasal verbs, hopefully you agree with that. Let me know in the comment section down below if you do. If not, there's probably not much I can do to help you, because this is all I do and this is the main focus of how I help people learn. This is how I learned Japanese myself and how I'm now a fluent speaker of Japanese. So if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section down below. And also check out our premium programs. You can click on the link in the description below this video to see more about our courses, but they all use this idea. It's all about learning things the native way, the smart way, to kind of sneakily get inside this castle of your mind. Because if you can do this, everything becomes much easier and this multiplies very rapidly and you take over the castle, rather than you standing out here and trying to spend years attacking this and trying to learn grammar or pronunciation or all these other things the traditional way that really don't work. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you had, do click that like button. Also, remember to subscribe to the channel to let Facebook, or not Facebook, let YouTube know. I feel bad about Facebook now. It's like I got like a girlfriend on the side named Facebook, and YouTube is going to be angry because I said that, but hopefully not. Anyway, do like the video if you had. Do share this video if you found this idea important. I know it's fun to learn more vocabulary and things like that, but if you understand these important foundational ideas, that's what's really going to help you become a fluent speaker much faster. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Do click on the link in this video or in the description below this video to learn more about our premium programs. But also you can take our quick quiz that will let you just tell me what specifically you struggle with, so I can give you specific information about that particular problem, whether it's listening, pronunciation, grammar, any of these other things, so I can show you how to stop learning like this and how to start learning like this over here. Well, that's it for this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.